And welcome back. Let's go ahead and jump right into working with our game here. One of the first things I want to do, though, of course, before we start adding our rotational input in, is I want to take a look at my player right now, and you can see we have our space shuttle here. One thing that sometimes happens when we click on this, you see it jumps to the prefab of the shuttle itself, and not necessarily to the parent player object. So before we get crazy with doing a bunch of different things, let's open up our prefabs folder. I'm going to drag the whole player object into there, and so now we have that player object prefab. And so now if I go through and I click on it, it'll jump right to that parent level. That's just going to save me some potential headaches in case if I accidentally grab like different pieces of the model and stuff like that. So let's go ahead, pop right over into our code and get ready to actually write the code we need to make this rotate. And the way we want to rotate this is probably around the z-axis, because that's going to make this shuttle kind of tilt up and tilt down. We can start by getting rid of our debug statement here because we know that this works. And we're going to go do this very similar to our upward process. So we're going to make an if statement, and let's just go ahead and accept that tab piece here. But notice it's saying if the rotation value is less than 0f. All right, and that's not quite what we want. We don't want the rotation value. Let's start off by asking, hey, if this is the rotation input, and we can say, is this greater than 0? Let's just try that one. If we look at that one, I just want to show you this real quick. If I say rotation input, notice we're getting an error here, and that's because rotation input is not a float, it's an input action. So that's why we took that suggestion there originally, but I want to make sure to show you that there because, again, it's important to make sure you know which variable or which object you're trying to pass here into this if statement. We want this rotation value because, again, that's corresponding to this float that we just created here previously. And the way we're going to rotate this is back with our good old transform command, and we have transform.rotate. And if we were to do this, we can, of course, say 0, 0, 1. And this, of course, would effectively just get us a z rotation all the way up to 1. But just like we saw up here with our add relative force, there's a better way to do this. I can actually come in here and use a vector3 dot, and there's actually a forward option. And so that's going to allow it to tilt in the forward direction. All right, so let's go ahead and test that. Now, because I had said it was less than 0, that means I'm assuming that's my left side input. So let's just go ahead and run this. I'm going to press the space bar. And yep, sure enough, I'm able to press that left key there. Let me go ahead and press it again. Bring that shuttle back down just a little bit here. We can see how it's angling upward. We have, of course, a little bit of craziness going on here. But that's all stuff that we can clean up later on. But it does kind of start giving us some ideas. Yes, our input is working. We're lifting upward with that left arrow key because we're turning to the left. Now, of course, we have set up a nice little bit of code here that handles the left side input. And I'm just going to make a note here with a single line comment. It just says left side input or rotate left. Just so that way we can remember what is this first if statement doing, because we also want to be able to handle one that handles the right side or have that space shuttle kind of turned downward. So let's just copy and paste this, and I'm actually going to change this from an if to a else if. And the reason why I want an else if here is because I don't want the player to be able to necessarily input left and right at the same time. You're either going to be going just left or you're going to be going just right. And so this is going to allow us to manipulate that. Now, you notice I do, of course, have a problem here in that I have less than 0f for both of these. Well, that's a pretty easy fix. I can just simply switch one to a greater than symbol, and that should take care of that. And so I'm just going to update my note here to myself that this is the right side input, or rotate to the right. And the other thing I need to do is I need to change my vector3.forward. Because right now, vector3.forward, of course, is turning forward. And you're like, well, is there a vector3.reverse? Well, no, there's not. So we can keep with our forward, but we can actually effectively just invert this whole thing by flipping a negative sign in front of it. And what that negative sign does, it just simply takes that value, and if it was a positive, it makes it negative. If it was negative, it makes it positive. And so back in Unity, let's go ahead and press play. I'm going ahead and let's raise up our shuttle here just a little bit, and start pressing left key. That's looking good. Press the right key, looks good. Yep, everything looks good. We get some good inputs here. All right, our shuttle's able to adjust there pretty easily. I might want to adjust that fall speed a little bit here because it is going a little fast, but that's something I can work on later when I start fine-tuning things later. But right now we have, of course, some left and right input. And actually we can do a little bit of that fine-tuning now. Because you notice when we do the left and right input, it is working, but it's just kind of operating under assumed default values. If we look at how we did our upward thrust before, we had these additional things we did. We had a modifier, and we had time times fixed delta time. So we actually can do the same thing here. So we're going to add a serialized field. Let's go ahead and accept the suggestion here. I'm going to call it the rotation modifier. I'm just going to go ahead and set it to 1F for now. Again, I can adjust that in my inspector later on. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come here. I'm going to copy this same process. I'm not going to press the copy key just yet because I'm just going to see if Visual Studio would be nice and help me autocomplete. So I'm going to just multiply this by my rotation modifier times time dot fixed delta time. And now that I have that process, now I can come in and copy that. So I'm just going to go copy that, paste that in place. But I can't leave this as is because as it is right now, it is going to work. But I can, of course, move this negative sign if I want. I could make it so that the negative sign is now on the negative value of that rotation modifier. And sometimes that might be better because this way I'm not worried about the vector somehow getting some weird values. Because the rotation modifier, if you look at it, that's a float. And because it's a float, it's very easy to make that positive or negative without worrying about any kind of weird values that might be generated. All right, and so back in Unity, let's go ahead and look at our rotation modifier. Now, our upward modifier was 10. So I might make my rotation modifier also 10, just to match that, just to start. And again, I can go and adjust these later on. So if I don't want my upward modifier so strong, I can do that. If I want my rotation to be better, I can do that. But let's go ahead and test it. I'm going to press the up key. And if I press those arrows, you can see they don't seem to be as responsive this time. So maybe I want the upward modifier to be a lot larger. So I'm going to make that, like, let's say 100. And say, oh, now we got some good input there. So you see now it's nice and responsive. I like that. That looks pretty good. But of course, there's always more we can do. We can fine tune this a little bit more, however we want to make this. For example, maybe want our game a little further away. We can maybe modify these values, maybe so they're not so sharp. Maybe we can make them a little bit softer, depending on how we want the player to be able to be, the level of responsiveness that we want them to have.